for host. So everyone, please welcome Steve Johnston, who's the Executive Director of OpenCape. Steve.
Thank you, Bert, and thank you all for getting up this morning. Hello, David. How are you? Good to see you. Glad you made it in. This is our first Zoom First Friday. If you didn't get to see Angela's wonderful, I've heard rave things about it, her Zoom class last week. I certainly had the benefit of getting it in person weeks ago, so I should be very Zoom proficient. We will be sharing a few slides as I talk about things today, but I don't want to bore you with slides. When Robin asked me to do this several months ago, it was really to talk about the Main Street Initiative, how OpenCape is focusing on kind of our Main Street Small Business Initiative, and then what was coming in terms of residential pilots and our whole residential program. And I'm going to add a few things to that today. Obviously, the world has changed in the past few weeks. I can attest to that. As we enter our 6th week of social distancing, I have watched Frozen and either some version of a troll movie about 800 times. So I am ready for the things to return to normal, whatever that may look like. So today, really, I'm going to talk about very quickly. The last time I did this was January 2016, which is a while ago. And I can tell you that was right after we had terminated our relationship with CapeNet, and it was a very different scenario. I don't think I let on at that time, but it was really, to be perfectly honest, it was a coin flip, whether OpenCape would continue or not. Luckily, we had a plan. We've executed on it, and I can say with the utmost confidence that OpenCape has never been more in a better position than it is right now. And I'll talk a little bit about that today. But that was, almost 4 years ago. So there's a lot of things we're trying to get done. There's a lot of things we've actually accomplished, and I'll run through them. I am going to talk about the Main Street initiatives, the residential pilots. I'm going to talk what we're doing on the COVID-19 response side, what we're seeing, and then how we're preparing for what comes next, what that might look like, and a role that each and every one of you can play in helping us kind of move forward. Because I think we all have an inherent interest in making sure that we have the right infrastructure so that we can all do our jobs, run our businesses, and flourish. So with that said, I'm going to I'm going to switch back and forth between things that I'm sharing, and we'll kind of go from there. And I'm going to just do this, I think. Let me just try doing that. Yeah, so this is kind of what we've talked about. We're going to cover really quickly today the past, present, and future, what we have been doing. You've seen that. Obviously, here's the network. We're really fortunate in the sense that we have this state-of-the-art fiber network at our fingertips. And I realize it doesn't reach everyone. It doesn't go by everyone's houses. At some people's houses, it does go by. Yes, Mark, I know it goes right by your house, and I know you want to be connected. If you do have any questions, you can either text me or let me know, or just speak up. I'm happy to answer them as we're going through this. But we really have a network that is state-of-the-art in every sense of the fashion, on par with the most sophisticated networks on the planet. And that's because really it's 7 years old. It's been built, and we've been running and operational for about 7 years. And really, it's performed flawlessly. I can't say that enough. I mean, for those of you that are either at OpenCape or down in the data center, we have very few problems besides squirrels maliciously attacking the network for whatever reason. They love to eat our fiber, and it's not just our fiber; it's fiber in general. The storm that comes by now and again even doesn't really bother us too much. Even the tornadoes, we had fiber on the ground, twisted in a heap. The network was still up. So it continues to surprise me how resilient the network is, and that's a credit to a variety of people. Gary Fahrenkopf, who is on our outside plant team, and Corinne Green. We were lucky enough to win the the draft lottery for Corinne's service when she left Verizon. She was an icon, and all the other networks were super jealous of us being able to retain her services. So with Carrie and Corinne on our team, we have a vast knowledge of how to maintain an outside plant, how to fix things, and how to keep it operational. And you may see them out on the road all the time. They're driving, looking at things, fixing things. Sure, stuff happens. 7 years into the lifespan of a fiber network, we have slack loops that are coming down, just wearing away, things like that. So just general maintenance, and we're doing a really good job of that. On the inside part of the network, you've got Yannick, our Chief Technology Officer, and Dan, our Director of Network Operations. They're doing a fantastic job working on making sure the systems work that control the network and manage the network as we continue to expand. We continue to add folks to the network, and we're still only using a tiny fraction of our overall capacity. I think the busiest segment on our network is this segment right here from Falmouth up to Hyannis. Very busy segment. We're actually looking at opening up another tube just to utilize and spread the management of the network a little bit better. But the one good benefit of COVID-19 is it's given both Yannick and Dan and Gary and Corinne a lot of time as we upgrade our systems. We've been doing a lot of server upgrades. We're switching to a program called OSP Insight, which allows us to track, monitor, record the network in ways that we have never been able to do before, all the way down to individual splices and individual splice cases. So we can really see the network at a 30,000 foot level and or a 3,000 foot level, and even closer. Look at the street level. So that's been incredibly useful for us, and the team has been working really hard on that. Not much has changed in terms of the network. It continues to be the only 100% fiber network that serves the Cape, southeastern Mass, part of the islands, and some of Rhode Island. Our latency continues to be incredibly low, and that's why a lot of the clients come to us is they are competing with other networks that have much greater latency. All of our enterprise clients are dual homed. No one else does this. This is the practice that we do, where we're coming out of your enterprise, your connection. One fiber goes east, one fiber goes west. It maintains an extra level of redundancy. All of our enterprise clients have that. The Main Street clients don't get that level of service, but there's some additional redundancy built into those systems as well. We continue to buy from multiple tier 1 providers, both in Providence and Boston. Those numbers bounce around a little bit. Sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 3 out of Providence and 2 out of Boston, or sometimes it's 3 out of Boston and 2 out of Providence. We continue to upgrade our relationships, utilize those relationships, and go from there. I'm just checking. I'm getting some alerts here. Do I have to do anything here? Let someone in? No. Okay, just checking. See, oh, I do have to. Sorry, Town of Chatham. There we go. Sorry, guys. This is Steve. I was driving and I forgot to let people in. My apologies. So we'll close that. Back up. I'm going to back up here a little bit. Maybe not. Our unique pass. This is really going to come into play as the bridge work starts to happen. The Sagamore Bridge, nothing really that unique about it. But the railroad bridge, very unique. We're the only one going across the railroad bridge. We're actually working right now with Eversource and another group about replacing 5 or 6 poles on the lead up to the railroad bridge to ensure they're sturdy and continue to carry the fiber. And then those poles will actually transfer to ownership. Right now, OpenCape is responsible for them. We're the only ones that attach to them, but they are literally Western Union poles. They are 100 years old. So one just blew down a few months ago. We had to cut it up. So we'll be replacing those and working with Eversource on that. That's in process right now. We are continuing to expand our dedicated symmetrical service, and we're building out there, and we are including our GPON, and I'll talk a little bit about what GPON is, our small business service in Falmouth, Woods Hole, and Hyannis. We continue to execute on our strategy to connect businesses, federal, municipal clients on or near our backbone. Hello, Kathy Lambert from Brewster. Thanks for joining us. So that's going really well. We are well past the point of sustainability. So in every metric you might consider, the network is strong, sustainable. It's financially well managed. Andrea Good, our CFO, and Jen Brown, our office manager, do a fantastic job of keeping us on track. The revenues, the cash flow, everything looks really good for OpenCape. That doesn't mean that I have the $100 million I would need to connect everyone on Cape Cod, but the network's not going anywhere. It's well maintained. We're in a really good position. And we are reinvesting back into the network. I'll talk specifically more a little bit about what's going on in terms of that. But we're able to extend the network. We're able to invest into projects. We're able to give back to the community as part of our mission. Our board of directors, for those of you that don't know, we have 14 board of directors that we meet with on a bi-monthly basis. And one of their core issues recently has been, in addition to all the things we're doing to benefit the region, are we giving back? Are we sharing? Are we going above and beyond servicing our communities? So I think we're doing a good job of that. We're going to be doing more of that as we move forward, but we're moving in the right direction. So let's talk specifically about a couple of different initiatives here. So our Main Streets initiative, this is a picture of downtown Falmouth, and there's some coverage we've received. Hang on, Jennifer, let me just let you in. There we go. Falmouth is a great kind of example for us. I'm going to take the slide off and talk for a minute. When we were approached about Falmouth on our Main Street initiatives, it really was the merchants, the Falmouth EDIC, the Chamber of Commerce. So Michael DiGiuliano at the EDIC, Michael Kasparian at the Chamber of Commerce, and the merchants themselves that came to us and said, hey, we can't process credit cards during the summer. And that's a relatively low threshold when you look at your internet connectivity, what you need to do, what services you need to provide for your store, your retail outlet, or whatnot. So we went around. We went around. Myself, Angela was with us then. She went around and talked to folks. We went around with Michael Kasparian in the Chamber of Commerce and spoke to individuals and people. The stories were actually shocking. That people at night were having to run to the old credit card machines where you'd swipe the carbon and they'd process credit cards at night, because during the day, through the existing the incumbent provider, they couldn't get enough bandwidth to process a credit card. I was blown away by that. So we looked at what we could do, and in working with some of our legislators from the Cape and Island delegation, in conjunction with the EDIC and the Chamber, Senator Demasiano, Representative Vieira, Representative Fernandez from Falmouth, were successful in getting some money for the Falmouth EDIC, and OpenCape actually worked with Mass Development to secure a Mass Development tech loan to fund the rest of that initiative. And we went forth and we have built fiber on Main Street in Falmouth. We've expanded. We have over 50 businesses that signed on. We were 12 deep, I believe, into build outs when COVID-19 happened. So we're in a little bit of a holding pattern right now. I have 12 to 15 clients right now waiting to be connected. We're just trying to work out our social distancing protocols to get people into the stores, the retail outlets, the businesses connecting. But all those businesses we anticipate will be connected before summer, and that's fantastic. So, and we really envision that service. I'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to share my screen again here for a moment. we're going to really move that service forward and expand on it. As you can see, the GPON technology that I kind of talked about is different than the dedicated symmetrical service that we use on our enterprise clients. In the central office, we put some technology, some different servers, our optical line terminals there. That reaches out to the splitter here, and then out to the actual clients, where in their location we have an optical network terminal as well as a router that is part of the deal. And for those Falmouth businesses, the way the breakdown of their service, they're paying, it's $80 a month. The service on our loan is $27 a month. And then there's a $10 reconnect fund. We established a fund where the first 65 businesses get connected for free. And then that $10 a month that's charged goes to replenish that fund. And that will continue to offer free connections. We envision in a 12 to 18 month period, servicing about 108 clients on Falmouth Main Street, both east and west, and then extending down into Woods Hole. The great thing about this particular initiative is it does allow us to extend down into Woods Hole. So virtually, whether you're Pie in the Sky or the Woods Hole Market or the Woods Hole Film Festival, it doesn't really matter if you're in Woods Hole or on the Main Street of Falmouth. So it's allowed us to add those individuals to the Main Street initiative, which is great. And that's something that I'll talk about more about scaling. Let me just change slides here for a second, sorry. And really, one of the really interesting things, this is just some of the engineering that we had to do for Main Street. We planned on connecting, my internet is unstable. I'm not even going to comment on that. We planned on, when you build out the GPON, you have to plan ahead. So this is Main Street Falmouth, and we are planning on connecting every building. So even if we're not servicing you currently, we've made provisions to connect every one of these buildings. You can see as we go building by building, how many units are in those buildings, what the poles are, where the line's coming in, how we would service that building if you were in this unit or this unit or this unit, even taking into account the residential units that typically are above these stores. So there's a lot of planning that goes into the GPON build-outs, and GPON stands for Gigabit Passive Optical Network. It's the same sort of network that Google used and continues to use, as well as a variety of other providers. So, and we're using the Calix equipment, and they're very well respected with the industry, and we're taking advantage of their technical assistance, their techs, their experience, and using their expertise to help us craft the network so it can be the most efficient network out there. So, so Falmouth is really in a unique spot right now, and I'll be perfectly honest. With over 50 businesses signed on, Falmouth is the Silicon Valley of Cape Cod for the moment. They have both the ability to have enterprise level service, and as well as the shared gigabit service. And the differentiating between the both, enterprise level, it's dedicated, it's symmetrical. That means it never varies, it never vacillates. Your download and your upload are the same. We can service anywhere from 20 megs to 100 gigs plus. Shockingly, we do have more than a few clients who are pushing and want to push past up to or past that 100 gigabit connection level. So we're scaling the rings on the network to be able to accommodate that. Yannick and Dan are working on that. Again, I mentioned the low latency we experience on the network. The dual homing is part of the enterprise level, but it does come with some higher costs. The cost to connect, we have to actually put a device in your business, and we have to, I'm sorry. I'm just opening our things. How will bridge replacements impact the OpenCape fiber connections? Good question, Scott. What kind of upload, download speeds on Falmouth? Okay, Steve. And so let's Embar. Okay, I will continue those. Sorry, I just saw those. let me just answer a couple of those questions. Let me just finish this and I'll answer a couple of those questions. The shared gigabit right now, we're kind of throttling it about 150 down, 75 up. And just kind of, we wanted to see how that plays out. We can loosen that up a little bit. We are not going to oversubscribe. So every network is oversubscribed at some level. The difference between probably what OpenCape does and what some of the larger commercial providers do, where they're oversubscribing in the magnitude of thousands. We might oversubscribe more on the, we might have 10 or 15 more businesses because not everyone's using it at the same time. And you have to take that into account. We also have some upside, the ability to kind of scale beyond. When I say it's a shared gigabit, it doesn't mean I'm only committing 1 gigabit of service to that particular ring. I could have multiple gigabits connected. So we're really anxious to kind of pay attention over the summer and watch how usage, what it looks like, how people are using it, how many people are using it at the same time. So I think people are going to have a really great experience having very reliable service that's not going to bounce up and down like you see in the summer here, and at a low cost of entry, a much lower MRC, monthly recurring charge, and it'll be significantly more reliable than what they're experiencing right now. Scott, to answer your question on the bridge replacements, and I can keep these questions going. So when we kind of built fiber across the Sagamore and the Railroad Bridge, we really stuffed the conduits. So we have a significant number of conduits across strands across the Sagamore. I want to say I think it's 650 strands across the Sagamore and another 400 to 600 across the Railroad Bridge. So we really, we put a couple 288s across there. So the fact that we're across the Railroad Bridge gives us some level of protection as the bridges are built. Obviously, we're working with the Army Corps of Engineers. They're not only they're maintaining the current bridges and planning for the new bridges, but they're also a client. In return for allowing access to the conduits, we provide service to them. So we're having discussions with them already in regards to, as the new bridges get built, having a significant presence going across those bridges. We don't see a lot of disruption. And the way the network is designed, if something did fail on one of the bridges, the system would automatically reroute across the southern route. So the fact the Railroad Bridge is going to be untouched is a huge benefit for anyone who's connected to the network, who's concerned about keeping up their connections 24/7, 365. Is the Falmouth model a model that can be duplicated in other towns across the Cape? That is a great question, and you are reading my mind as we kind of float ahead. So let's talk a little bit about Hyannis really quickly here, because I want to stay on track. We have about another 15 minutes to go, and I'll take some more questions. So based on the success of Falmouth, and I say success, I see it as a huge success. While everything's not in place yet, while we don't have everyone connected yet, we would have if we, in view of COVID-19. So we immediately looked at a couple areas in Hyannis. This is the residential project we announced at 255 Main Street in Hyannis with Rob Brennan and Cape Built Development. They have a reputation for some fine home crafting and building crafting here on the Cape. We also have another building connected. We have the Williams building down in the Village Marketplace. We built fiber into it. We have not yet extended that fiber up into the residential apartments. There's 52 apartments there, I believe. We continue to work with them on the best system to do that. These are two very different buildings. The 255 Main Street building has been stripped down to the studs, so we had complete access. It's almost like a new rebuild. I'll show you some photos in a moment, whereas the Williams building is an older building that hasn't been renovated as of yet as extensively. So working on fiber through the building up to the upper level apartments is a little more challenging. So let's just take a minute and step back and look at the growth incentive zone in Hyannis and why we're looking at it. This is the growth incentive zone, which is downtown Hyannis. You can see the marina, the harbor over here. You've got South Street, Main Street, North Street, and this is kind of breakdown of what kind of businesses are in downtown Hyannis. The growth incentive zone is obviously, there's some benefits financially for the town, for the county, for anyone doing business there about reinvestment and growth. And so we looked at that, and then we looked at, this is another map of the same sector with our fiber laid over it. The blue lines are our backbone. The green lines are laterals to existing clients. So over here we have the hospital. We go up Camp Street to Cape Cod Cardiology and Cape Cod Urology. Down here to the High Line. Over here to Sturgis and a variety of schools. St. Francis and Pope John Paul. The new fire station. A variety of building businesses up through here. Williams, the Village Marketplace, more Sturgis locations down here. So the variety of locations in downtown Hyannis. As we looked at, and this red X right here, the red star right here, represents, we just let in our friends from Coastal Engineering. Come on. Having some technical difficulty. There we go. Hello, Coastal Engineering. Welcome aboard. So the red X right here represents, the red star represents 255 Main Street. Over here is the Williams Building. Both these buildings have allowed us to put the similar type of equipment that we put in downtown Falmouth into downtown Hyannis. This will allow us to offer the same kind of services. Now, what Hyannis doesn't include is the build out. We haven't been able to, well, we haven't really tried this yet. We haven't done the extended build out. We have some plans for Main Street and North Street. These were things that I'll talk about in a little bit about how our financing is working and what we're looking at on some of these projects. But the good news is we've made the investment, we've purchased the equipment, and we're in the process of putting it in the Hyannis co-location space that will allow us to service these type of clients. And yes, this is something we can extend to other main streets, other towns. And if you're a town manager, if you know the town manager of your town, this is something we can do to revitalize Main Street. And we'll talk about this more in a little bit as far as we've thought about that. We're trying to do that. We're trying to secure funding for that. Here's a little more in detailed schematic of this is 255. This is Heritage House and Hotel, which we connect already. But here's the 255 building. Our network, the backbone actually runs right by. So we're coming out of a splice case down here, just down to a pole, then into the building. And it kind of looks like that. We come into the basement of the building. We're running fiber to each unit. So it'll be fiber all the way up to each unit. And then within the unit, they'll have both wireless capabilities and wired Cat6 capabilities. Let me go back over here, some questions for a moment, and I can kind of address these. Rob, I agree. I don't think summer will be normal. Just add, hang on. Perfect. Are the islands served by the same level of infrastructure as the rest of the network? Mary, I wish I could say yes. So let me answer that question really quickly. We have a very limited amount of fiber out to Nantucket, and our connection to Martha's Vineyard is via microwave, simply because Comcast would not allow us into the underwater pipe when they upgraded that when OpenCape was just getting going. I am working on a project right now. It would cost us, we've talked to the vendors that do this work, to run fiber out to Martha's Vineyard. They basically said the cost would be about $4.5 million. But while I had the boat on site, I could also do Nantucket, which would cost me another $1.5 million. So about $6 million will get it done for us to really run robust fiber to both Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. So a little bit later in the presentation, I'll talk about what we're doing, how we're targeting that. One of the benefits of being a nonprofit, a 501c3, is we can actually target some of those individuals who might be able to write a check for $6 million to get us the ability to run fiber out to the islands. From Chatham Works, sorry, is a hard data you can point to that demonstrates the expansion could likely lead to economic growth. I am going to talk about the whole issue, Rob. For those are good questions. You know, it's when I talk about OpenCape, whether it's here with you guys or at the national level or in Washington, D.C., or to our legislators or to the governor, lieutenant governor, I position it solely as an economic development engine. And you know, our work universe has changed to such a dramatic place that, you know, 15 to 20% of the folks that are working remotely right now probably will continue to work remotely. They won't go back to their offices. And I can just tell you anecdotally from talking to a variety of CEOs of much larger companies, everyone right now is rethinking their footprint. What is that footprint going to look like? How are they deploying people? One of my college roommates is president of sales for M&M Mars Wrigley. And he told me weeks ago that the last 3 weeks, that's all they've talked about is reallocating people, how they would actually work in this new COVID-19 post work environment, reducing the square footage, they're leasing, they're renting, their businesses are in. I've heard this over and over and over from multiple people that I've talked to, that fully 15 to 20% of the workforce probably will remain working remotely. And for us, I see that as a huge opportunity to, you know, many of you I've talked to before about this. You know, the great thing about living on the Cape is we live and work someplace that everyone wants to live. And if you can work remotely and have great infrastructure, then for us, that means an economic development boom beyond tourism. That means, you know, people with great salaries working, paying taxes, sending their kids to school, paying for infrastructure. And that's really what we want. That's one of the things that we can actually make a difference on. So those are great questions. I'm just reading another note here. I'm going to talk about residential. So they're a good question from the town of Chatham. I will jump forward and talk a little bit about Chatham. Let me close that for a second as I go back to sharing my screen for a minute. Here we go, sorry. So let's keep going so I can stay on track and continue to add, answer more questions. So here's just some more shots of 255 at this building. We're using this new Corning fiber inside that is a greater bend radius and allows us to not worry so much about breaking fiber because it is indeed glass. So we're using some of that there on site, and that site will be ready for a kickoff probably sometime in late June, the middle of June, in that range. What this does not mean that we're offering some residential stuff, and I just want to say this. We are doing some limited pilot programs on residential. It does not mean that, Mark Amherst, I'm going to come to your house and connect to your residential service. I realize my fiber runs across your front lawn, under your porch, through your kid's sand pit, and out the other side of your property. This is, you know, for me to do, for OpenCape to do residential at any level of scale, the cost would be dramatic. And even though we're doing great, I don't have those type of resources. The concept here, and I'm continuing to talk about this, is we are working with towns and communities. Our feeling is the best path forward is that if a town, kind of like what's happening in Falmouth, and I'll talk about that in a couple minutes, where a group of citizens pushes forward the concept of building out a local network in their town and then connecting that local network to OpenCape, that makes a tremendous amount of sense, both financially as well as from the infrastructure standpoint. The towns have the bonding authority. They have access to bonding those physical builds out over a period of years, and I simply don't have access to that sort of revenue and capital. So I think it makes a tremendous amount of sense looking at that kind of model. We're working with towns to support that. We fully support the Falmouth Community Internet Network movement, and that's a benefit of a group of citizens who came together who were frustrated with only having one choice and said, let's do something else. And so they're making a lot of progress. I'll give some updates. I know some of those people. I know Courtney and David are on this call, probably Artisan as well, who are intimately involved in that. And that's actually moving forward, as well as other scenarios. But I put this up there just to, I don't want people to think, hey, anytime I talk about residential, and Jen can attest to this, our phones go crazy, people call, hey, I hate my current provider, I need connectivity, can you please come and connect us? And I would love to. Nothing would make me happier. I've said it multiple times. My bill at my house here is $300, and it's gone up. It's $364 a month now, which is shocking for the amount of service that we get. And you know, I prefer. I forgot to mention this. At 255, we're providing service to those residents, a shared gigabit of service for $55 a month. So that's a dramatic cost savings, and we will continue to try to do those. So there will be some more residential pilots coming in different parts of the Cape and off Cape. I haven't talked a lot about off Cape today because, you know, people forget we do connect the 15. We do connect the 15 towns on the Cape. We have service out to the islands. We do connect a few folks on the islands, but we also touch 35, almost 40 towns off Cape as well. So when I talk about our footprint, I'm talking about not only the Cape and Islands, but I'm talking about Brockton, New Bedford, Fall River, Providence. You know, we connect a variety of South Coast hospitals facilities now, I think 8 off Cape, a variety of companies and organizations. So we're competing with Comcast, Verizon, and some of the other players. Obviously here on the Cape, we're really going head to head with Comcast in most cases, Verizon, not so much, and a few of the other players. So I will continue, and I've got another chat message here. Let me just get out here. Okay, just some articles, perfect. Let's keep going. I'm going to share another screen here for a moment, so just bear with me. Okay, so let's talk about residentials a little bit. So I've talked about Falmouth, the Falmouth Community Internet. If you haven't been to their Facebook page, I would highly recommend you do that. Another town that's really kind of jumped forward and moving quickly ahead, Fairhaven, Mass, off Cape. They are looking at building out a municipal network to reach their 6,700 households. They have issued an RFP, hired a consultant. They're doing much of the same work that Falmouth is doing in terms of understanding how much it would cost them to build out, what type of services would be offered. So there's a lot of progress there. Our friends over in Yarmouth, you know, I've said this many times, Dan Napick, the town manager in Yarmouth, no one understands this stuff better than Dan does. He was the mayor of Westfield, Mass, and Westfield is famous now for taking the municipal light plant, creating Whip City Fiber, and then Westfield, which was the Comcast enclave. I think some 75% of the town now is taking service from Whip City Fiber now. So sorry, there we go. Hello. So Yarmouth also hired a consultant. They've done some work on revitalizing along Route 28 where our fiber is, working with them to create a little more robust business area. In the town of Carver, they have already built a municipal loop. In New Bedford, OpenCape is currently connecting and powering their new municipal ring, where we're connecting not only the town hall, but police and fire and additional folks in their municipal ring. I've had a lot of conversations with our friends up in Quincy. We don't actually serve Quincy, but just another example of, you think of Quincy being a relatively large community. They have a lot of people who are getting 10 down, 1 up on their service, and they're looking to build their own network. So we've been doing a lot of work with that. I saw our friend Mark Howell from Concord is on the call today. Mark is integral and was at Concord Municipal Fiber. They built out fiber. There's a plethora of Massachusetts towns that have done this and done it recently. As many of you know, I grew up out in Western Mass, so I speak fluent Western Mass in the Berkshires. But a ton of towns like Alford, Egremont, Mount Washington, Otis, where you'd be more likely to see Bigfoot than to get a robust internet signal, have all built out. And part of this is on the funding of MBI and the Commonwealth, and I'll get into that in a minute. But there are tons of examples in Massachusetts of towns building out residential and doing it well, doing it cost effectively. The reason the towns, it makes so much sense to build out is you can go through and you can connect every household, whether they're going to take service or not, and that just pushes your price down to connect a household. So if you want to get some semblance of an idea of how much it would cost to build out fiber in your community, take the number of homes in your community and multiply it on the high end by $2,500 per home. That's the national average. But if you build out an entire community at once, you probably can drive down that cost, as we're seeing in a couple of examples, to $1,200, $1,500 a home, maybe even lower if you're super efficient. And it really based on being super efficient. So you might get down, some people said they've gotten down to $800 a home. I believe Leverett, Mass had said that number. So you really can kind of get an idea of what we're doing on that side of the residential equation. As I started to talk about, because we're slowly running out of time here, our work environment has changed forever. For early estimates say as much as 15 to 20% of the workforce may continue to work remotely. Just look at some of these numbers. Comcast has experienced 38% increased usage. All in all, I would give Comcast kudos. The network has performed better than I anticipated. So kudos to Comcast on that. Zoom, the platform we're using today, has grown from, in December, they only had 10 million monthly attendees, and in the month of April, they had 300 million. Likewise, Microsoft Teams and Google Meet. And as I mentioned earlier, every corporation is rethinking and exploring alternatives, how they utilize and deploy staff, because it's not going to go back to the way it was, which is kind of interesting for us. Let me answer a couple more questions here to see. I'm going to take myself off screen share for a moment, and I can answer some questions here. Let's see. Are these towns sharing their stories? Yes, absolutely. If you go to, if you Google community broadband networks or Muni Networks, muninetworks.org, you can see they do a great job of profiling all these stories. Chris Mitchell he's been out here a bunch of times, writes about stuff, and we'll be doing that, more of that. We talk to him pretty frequently. So yes, there's a lot of stories out there. Thank you, Peter, for posting a link to the Falmouth Community Network. Part of our kind of what we're doing, and I'll get back to that in a minute, is we're going to help share these stories so we can use these stories as examples of things we should be doing. David, good point to everyone. The internet was designed for resilience, and when the crisis hit, the internet was ready and able to handle it. Absolutely, we've absolutely seen that. Very few outages. I thought we'd see some massive outages, and we haven't seen that. So I'm actually pretty impressed. Does OpenCape have a residential model that connects individual houses to the network? Courtney, that's going to be one of our next pilots we're going to do, where we're not going to do an MDU, a multiple dwelling unit. We're going to do a few residential individual houses. We do have a few folks we're going to connect that are working from home as part of the Main Street initiative, or have their home business, their home office within our footprint. So we are going to connect them. So that's kind of a sneaky way to do some residential and test that. It really provides an opportunity for us to kind of look at what we need to know when we're connecting residential units. How many guys with hats and ladders and trucks do we need? How many phone calls are we going to get? We're doing a lot of work with our folks. We power the Taunton Municipal Network. They connect maybe 1,000 people in Taunton. They get like a 1 call a week. They were all set up to answer all these phone calls, and they never came, because when you have great service that's reliable and affordable, people don't call. Yes, you get people who call because they're using their laptop has Microsoft Windows 1, and they can't get a gigabit of service. But we don't see a lot. We're not anticipating seeing a lot of that. So that's why we're doing some of these pilots, to kind of talk about different things that we can kind of assist people here. I'm just going through the questions. I continually receive requests from channels brothers looking for alternative and to cut the cable. Well, I think, the town of Chatham, I think the town of Chatham, is just asking about residential, and, we certainly, we'd like to work with Chatham 365, look at the Chatham Main Street initiative to get some of that same technology in there. So we have the flexibility to offer both residential and or small business service. Residential stuff would be, again, pilot stuff. And from David, yes, Chris Mitchell is a national treasure. Yeah, go to Community Broadband Networks or muninetworks.org. There's great stories on there, whether if you're a select board member or the selectmen or select board members in your town, or your town manager or an IT manager. There's great examples of real success stories that people are doing across the nation. These are folks that we talk to and kind of peer with. I'm going to switch back to my network for a minute. Really quickly, I'm going to talk about COVID-19, what we did. The minute this hit, we actually moved relatively quickly. One of the benefits of being a smaller organization. All our clients got the offer, 100% free bandwidth upgrades. I don't care what you need. If you had a 50 meg termination service with us, and you wanted 500 megs, no problem. If you had a gig, you wanted 2 gigs, no problem. We've had 52 or 53 clients take us up on that offer, and we've gladly done that. Increased termination, increased the bandwidth to those clients absolutely for free, whatever they needed. In some cases, we just doubled it if they weren't sure what they needed. We've doubled it and then turned it up again if they needed more. We have signed on to the FCC's terms and conditions about no termination and flexible payments. We've gone above and beyond in terms of the flexible payment, forgiving some people's payments and lowering their payments just to keep them connected. And we'll continue to do that if anyone needs that. We have reached out and offered deeply discounted connections for arts organizations that were really reeling from, if you're closed and you're unable to generate revenue and want to share both the art and the museum elements of what you're doing, but also the classes and how you interact with patrons and members. We've reached out to some arts organizations to talk about that. We continue to be a resource for public safety, whether it's a connection to a testing facility or a field hospital or whatnot. We're prepared, able, and ready to respond to that. And we're discussing some other options. One of the things we're looking at, because we do connect 33 libraries on the Cape, we are talking to the folks at Clams and libraries at about OpenCape would potentially consider upgrading their Wi-Fi connections out to the parking lot so people would have access to more robust connections in the parking lot at libraries. We've seen this work in Eastham where we've pushed out some fairly significant bandwidth, and that might be a model we are looking at doing in other communities on the Cape, just so people have access, which is great. And that's one of the benefits we can do. We can absorb that cost and take advantage of that. What we're doing for the future, and this is really important, how we're planning for future infrastructure investment. We've been working with the Commonwealth, with the Cape and Island delegation. They've been great. We had, again, submitted requests in the governor's economic development budget just before the pandemic hit, money for Hyannis, Mashpee, and Provincetown to build out the Main Street element, to expand the fiber in downtown so we could offer the same thing that we did in Falmouth. We made it into the governor's economic development budget last year. They never released the money. So that's always, you have to fight for it, and we're continuing to do that. We continue to lobby for inclusion in any mass broadband funding, but the Commonwealth is really focused on Western Mass. Some of you know that over the last 4 years, they've spent over $100 million, almost $20 million on last mile connectivity in Western Mass. And the Cape and Islands have received zero. And that's an issue that I continue to bring up to Secretary of Housing and Economic Development Neely, assistant deputy director McGordy, the governor, the lieutenant governor. We're using all of our communication tools to talk about the inequity in funding and why the Commonwealth feels it's okay to pay so much attention to Western Mass, which I understand. There are some different scenarios out there. There are towns that have absolutely no infrastructure and no connectivity, but there are towns that do. And I made the case very vehemently to Secretary Neely last time I saw him, was that we're in a unique situation as well, that we may be technically served, that no one else sees the explosion of population in the summer we do, where Falmouth goes from 30,000 people to 100,000, and Provincetown goes from 2,000 people to 60,000. And the Cape in general probably reaches closer to 1 million people in the summer. No other communities, maybe some folks on the North Shore and Cape Ann, have to deal with that. And I know Representative Peake was working with her counterpart from Cape Ann, who chairs the Infrastructure Committee. Both senators here, Representative Peake, were working on us to try to see if we can get some of these economic development funds. But we're continuing to work on that. And then those dollars really go to the towns. They don't come to Open Cape. But we continue to play our part and work in conjunction with towns to do that. We're continuing also to work with USDA, exploring the role we can play in distant learning and telemedicine grants. As you can imagine, telemedicine grants are the rage right now. USDA actually has their DLT grant out right now, and communities can kind of apply for that. There are some rules and restrictions on it. We just had a call with them on Wednesday. So we're looking at things like that. There are going to be numerous federal infrastructure initiatives underway. I mean, every day we're seeing a new one. There's at least 10 or 12 bills currently proposed that will be consolidated for infrastructure initiatives. There's the Democratic one and the Republican side. So we are working very aggressively with the NTIA, Department of Commerce, the FCC, about if monies are released, how can we make sure that at least Open Cape, who's already received a significant grant back in 2009, we get additional dollars to let us to further expand. And we're talking about our successes. I'll talk about that in a second. And as a 501(c)(3), we certainly continue. We've developed a case for support, and we are continuing to prepare. Really quickly, we're expanding our communications. We're showcasing our successes. We're positioning ourselves for federal funding. We've hired not one, but 2 PR communications agencies, one here on the Cape, Orange M and Carol McLeod Design, and Green Owl, which is a PR communications technology agency in Boston to help us get our stories out and focus our voice a little bit. We continue to focus on and invest in growth moving forward. And let me answer some more questions here. We're kind of wrapping up as far as time is going. So let me just cancel this here, get out of, with me for 1 second. There we go, back to this. Let me see, sorry, you can't see slides. College Light Opera in West Falmouth, we're building a reversal bar on campus. We'll be serving the air for the next year. I'll take a look at that, Joan, from College Light, and I can get back to you privately. Thank you, Clams. Yes, we want to continue to work with you as well. Bruce, I'm sorry you can't see the slides. Shoot me an email at sjohnston@opencape.org, and I will shoot you the slides. Yeah, I mean, Courtney, I completely agree with you. The COVID-19 for us is a double-edged sword. It is, our phones have never rang as much because everyone wants great connectivity. Obviously, the human suffering and loss is the bad part of it. But it has shown the light on the fact that broadband is a critical part of our infrastructure. It needs investment. We need to grow it. We need to expand it. And that happens both at the town, the state, and the federal level. So that's kind of really what we're focused on. I mean, the good news for us is that you have a well-managed, successful middle-mile network that's doing everything in its power to kind of meet and service needs. I wish I had more money that I could do more things, but we're, I'm pretty pleased with the stuff we're able to accomplish. The communities are facing funding crunch. How do we address that challenge? I mean, Courtney, I think we're going to see funding come, dollars flow, infrastructure dollars flow for infrastructure build outs at the local level. And really, it's a byproduct of taking citizens stepping up and saying, hey, you know, we need this for our, whether it's a board of select board, the town managers, citizens. I mean, in Falmouth, you guys have done a great job rallying support. I mean, the meeting I was at in Falmouth, there was 350 people there. So there's a lot of support for this. Part of our job is to help educate people. People don't understand the difference between what a fiber connection can do versus, you know, a coaxial connection. And again, I'm not trying to hammer on Comcast. You know, it's not their fault. They have an old legacy network. It just is what it is. Yes, they utilize fiber, but again, you know, if you do the math, you figure they connect 75,000 people on the Cape alone, start doing the math, figure out what the average monthly cost is. They're making a significant amount of money, and that money could be reinvested back in the Cape. They choose not to, and I don't see that changing. So, and that's kind of our perspective. So we're doing the best we possibly can. My staff works incredibly hard. You know, it's funny, people will say, oh, you're not that big. I have about 10 full-time folks right now. We are hiring for a new director of sales. And we had 135 applicants. I can tell you, I was blown away by the quality of these people. And we have people from every one of our competitors, which is great. They all want to come and work with us. That's fantastic. But, you know, we have our staff, and then we really take advantage of utilizing outside resources. So, you know, our accounting is done by a local company. Our legal is done by a local company. So when you add up all our contractors, subcontractors, and folks we use, we have about 40 people working on behalf of building, expanding, and servicing the network. It's pretty impressive, and we're doing good. So, yeah, I think, David, I absolutely agree. Comcast is right. Comcast has done a really good job, and I will be the first one to say that. My service has been pretty solid during this. I mean, yes, it's still not super fast, and I still pay an obscene amount of money on a monthly basis. And maybe that's just because I run OpenCape, they stick it to me. But yeah, I think we've all kind of benefited from that. But, you know, I can say on the business side, on the enterprise side, costs have come down dramatically just because of our presence. And I can tell you, we're talking with Newport and the city of Newport about potentially expanding them into Newport, because if you're a business in Newport and you want 100 meg symmetrical connection that I charge $800 for all day long, dedicated and symmetrical, Cox is charging $3,500 a month for that same connection because there's no competition. So competition really does bring the price down. I've seen Comcast's price come down on the Cape pretty dramatically, and that benefits everyone. So I'm happy to answer any more questions if people have them. That's really all I have. I'm always available offline, and I appreciate everyone's time today.